What's happening, world? I'm your host, the Wizard of Woz, Benji Wozniak. And this week, Kyra and I are going over the comedy classic, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Now, what's so funny about this is I will say out the gate, I am not a well-versed Abbott and Costello person. All I really knew was who's on first. I was taught that in like my 10th grade English class, and we were learning about, like, I don't know, we were studying it, and that was all I really knew about them. And then I did know peripherally that they were this comedy duo, but this was the actual first movie from them I've ever seen. So what's your history with them and the film?
Okay, so I am older, and my father was older than me, of course, and my father grew up watching Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin, Abbott and Costello. So for me, my dad got me into watching the older comedy duos, like, what was it, Babes in Toyland with Laurel and Hardy. And I'm a huge fan of Abbott and Costello. I've watched almost all their movies. Meets Frankenstein is one of my favorites. Meets the Killer is another comedy classic. Hold That Ghost. So there's tons and tons of Abbott and Costello movies that, like, for me, I could sit and watch all day.
Absolutely. And that's so cool that their film history is so rich and that they have such like a lasting impact. I mean, I love a physical comedy, and I don't think until I actually watched a movie, because when you're reading it, you don't get it, but how physical their comedy is and how they like commit to the bit. I was so impressed by it.
Yeah, there's one part of Frankenstein Meets Frankenstein where the monster's hand comes through the door, and Costello was on cue. He was supposed to stand at a certain point, and he knew that if he went a little further, the monster's hand would actually strike him. So he did it on purpose to get hit, and then like he did this like whole little spit with it, and they kept it in the movie because they thought it was just so funny.
It is so funny. And I think like that, I love that. And I love when actors commit more than like what they're supposed to. And I think that you can tell that they're like really passionate. They're trying to have a good time with it. While reading some history on the film, I know that there was a lot of like studio things that went wrong, and we got Bela Lugosi, but we don't have Boris Karloff in the film. We just have him promoting it. Never seen it. So I know that there's some drama, but when you're watching it, it feels like it's such a fun time. And we're going to dive into more of what the film's about and what it goes through, but it is fun, and it was really interesting, I thought.
Yeah, and like to know that like they thought Bela Lugosi was dead. They didn't even know that he was alive to do Dracula. So,
I know.
So that's pretty funny. He's like, no, I'm alive.
He's like, no, I want to be in this movie.
Right.
So getting into it, we have Abbott and Costello. Their names are Chicken Lou.
Yeah.
Chicken Lou. And as you know, they're two very different body types. We have Abbott, right?
Yes.
The taller one. Chick in the movie. That's how I'm going to refer to him. So we have Chick, who's like taller, what you would consider more classically like good looking, I guess, but to me he was old. And then we have Costello, the shorter one, who is kind of dim-witted. They make him out to be heavy set, smaller, what someone would deem unattractive. But what I love about it is at every turn, he is the most attractive man in the movie. And I think it is so funny, to the point where Chick was like, you got two girls, I don't even have one leg. What am I doing? I loved it. And Costello was just like, I'm like a good guy. Like maybe they just like me. And I think that is a really important point, because I'm going to get rambly because I have a lot to say about this movie. But I love that dichotomy and how it plays later when we see our two main females. We have the classic dark-haired femme fatale, like obviously the bad one, because that's how you can discern good women and bad women in film, is by their hair color. And then we have the more softer investigative journalist, Miss Do Right. And I think, and they're both interested in Costello. They don't care about Chick at all.
Yeah.
And I think it is. So how do you view that? Because obviously we come from different time points. So when you saw that, because to me it was a big part of the movie.
Well, it's the classic villainous black hair. She's the villainess. The way the damsel is the blonde hair. You know, when you picture like, you know, the princesses and they're considered with blonde hair. I mean, then they go off, some princesses go off the block with like, you know, Snow White has black hair. Normally when you think of a damsel in distress, it was like a blonde haired, blue-eyed girl that, like, you know, was very attractive, and she was like the heroine. And that's where we get the investigator, and then the doctor was the bad.
Right, but what I loved is like when you use the word damsel in distress, like I viewed Costello as the biggest damsel in
Yes,
distress
she
for
was,
the whole
yes.
movie. And I loved that the doctor, she was a lady, she was evil, obviously, because she used her dark-haired powers of seduction to get him to Dracula's manor. And then we have the investigative journalist who's like, I'm gonna come and save you. And like, I thought that was so funny because we usually see women in this role, so I liked it that it was turned. Obviously, Abbott and Costello being the main players of this film, they're gonna have the titular roles. But I thought it was really interesting to see that they didn't damsel one of their women; they had themselves damseled.
Yeah, and I thought that it was really good how they put the film together. You know, Chick and Lou are basically, they work in like a delivery service, like on a dock or something, where like crates come in for Mcdougals House of Horror, and it's got Frankenstein and Dracula in them. And, you know, they just think it's just props, but in reality, it really is Frankenstein and Dracula in them.
And I think McDougal also thought that they were props.
Yes, yes.
Like, no one knew that they were real, which was, I thought that one scene when they're like, when Costello's on top of the giant crate. It is so funny. I mean, the lengths that they go to. When you said Charlie Chaplin, I totally see his like silent film influence. Granted, this movie did come out in 1948, so you do have that black and white, like old Hollywood feel to it, but I felt like it still held up today.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It is so funny. And, like, you know, the fact that they had all the monsters, like, you know, the Wolfman comes, Lon Chaney, he knows that they're the real monster, but no one believes him, just like no one believes Lou. And, like, so they go back and forth, and, like, Lou knows it's the monster, but he also thinks that Chaney's a nutbag, besides Chick thinking he's a nutbag, too.
Right. Like, and I just love how, like, no one believes each other. One of the best sequences to me was when Chick is trying to drop off Lon Chaney's bags, and he's like already transforming into this like monster, and they just keep like missing each other in this hotel room. It's just such a great example and a study of like perfect comedic timing.
Yeah.
And I think everything that they do in this movie is super intentional.
Yes.
Everything has a point. It all loops back around. It's so funny. So I want to let's get back into the story. So Chick and Lou obviously get embroiled into this scheme when the McDougal thinks they harm his wax figures, not knowing that they're real, but having it be a plan set up by Dracula and the doctor, the lady doctor. We'll call her Dr. Darkhair because, guys, I forget their names. So, because they want to get Lou's brain to put into Frankenstein. Which is so funny. They're like, he's so dumb and he's so dim-witted. Like, we can do it. We can fool him. We can get him in. And it's like, okay, but why are you trying to put like a dumb brain into Frankenstein? Like, wouldn't you want a smart brain? Or are you saying that like you couldn't fool a smart person?
I think Dracula wanted him to be controllable, not
True.
not crazy like the brain that's in it, because he had Frankenstein's brain was the brain of a lunatic, because Igor had dropped it in the real brain and put the lunatics in it. So Frankenstein basically is uncontrollable, and he can be controlled to an extent, but when he gets mad, then all things are off, and that shows in the movie. Like, when he gets his power back and he's really charged up, you ain't stopping him. And even Dracula's like, oh shit.
He's like, oh god, what did I awake?
Yeah.
But it's so good. It's so funny. I love the idea that all these people have come from separate places and separate origins, but through pop culture and through all these things, like they've come together. It's like, in what world would Dracula and Frankenstein's monster be friends? Because that doesn't make sense. Frankenstein's monster in the book canonically goes to Antarctica to be alone.
Yep.
Because he is so deep and philosophical and understands the human condition so much that he understands that by looking the way he looks, he'll never have a life, which I think is so profound. I mean, that monologue. Did you read Frankenstein? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein? Yes. Okay, so you know that monologue I'm talking about at the end. It's incredible. But I think it's so funny now that we've created Frankenstein's monster into this very like comical, brutish, angry. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think that came from.
So when they made the monster, they basically wanted Dr. Frankenstein to be the villain. Like, Dr. Frankenstein is the villain.
Well,
like,
he is the villain. He's a necromancer.
He's definitely the villain. And the monster isn't really a villain. It's more of like a child. He's new to the world. He doesn't understand things. Like, in the movie, there's a little girl throwing flowers in the water, and Frankenstein picks her up and throws her in the water, and she drowns. He didn't do it to be mean. He just doesn't understand. And I think that's the point of the monster. The monster's someone that's naive, doesn't understand, and the world around him doesn't understand him, so they villainize him. They're like, oh, he doesn't look good. He was stereotypically ugly. He was dumb.
I mean, he was decaying.
Right. And so people look at him. It's like society. If someone walked up and was ugly, brutish, people are going to shy away from him. They're going to make judgments of him. And I think that was what happened with the monster. And the monster's only reaction was to attack because he doesn't know. It's like fight or flight, So he's basically, they're coming after him with pitchforks and stuff like that. What's he supposed to do? I mean, wants to live. So I think that's where the monster, it's not really a monster.
No, absolutely. And then we see this iteration of a very comical monster. Yeah. And we see Lou, who is also very comical, very as I would say, has some parallels to the monster, a little misunderstood by his friend, obviously is not what the standard of beauty is at that time, but is pulling beautiful women. I do want to get back into the relationship between the two women and their portrayal in this movie, because that to me was kind of out of left field. I wasn't expecting these two women to drive the plot the way they did, because yes, Lou and Chick drive the plot. Yes, Frankenstein's monster and Dracula drive the plot. Yes, the Wolfman drives the plot, but not to the point that these women are actually the ones pulling the strings. They're the ones that are getting these people to these locations. They're the ones that are furthering the plot, which I thought was so progressive, because in film we like to talk about how we're trying to be so progressive. We're in the hashtag girl boss and me too, and not me too, that's not what I meant, but we're in this hashtag girl boss, lady boss era, and I feel if you look back, women in film were way more respected. I felt like these two women were respected throughout the whole film. Granted, they were in these very stereotypical roles of dark hair equals bad, blonde hair equals good. We're still trying to unlearn a lot of that, but I think it was interesting that they had so much agency and power within themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Dracula needs the doctor to perform this. He can't do it himself. He needs her. So when she rebels against him, he basically makes her into his slave, because he knows that he can't. She even says it. She goes, "My will is just as strong as yours," and he goes, "We'll test it."
Exactly. We'll keep going.
But I'm saying so you can see that she's her own independent woman, and then the same thing with the detective. The detective, they're you should let us do this, and she's like, "I got this." She's like, "I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this myself, and I'm gonna get to the bottom of this." So.
And she's the one that thinks of the plan to have them infiltrate the castle. Is oh, we're all going to the masquerade ball, even though the intention is to never go to the ball. I think it's so interesting that both these women are driving forces in the movie, because obviously they do end up getting sidelined for Abbott and Costello, but I think if you look at it story-wise, they were the main point. Well, not the main points, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're the driving force behind the movie. They really are. I mean, there's one point when they get to the masquerade ball and the Wolfman says Dracula, and he's like, "I'm not Dracula. I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "No, you're Dracula. The monster's here." And, I think her name's Cassandra.
Yeah.
She looks at him and goes, "Tell me more." Because she believes him. She wants to know exactly what's going on. And Dracula's like, "No, I'll tell you." So, she's very assertive. And, both women are very assertive at a time period when women weren't really assertive. So, for me, that was amazing.
Exactly. Or in a time period where, yes, women were repressed in different ways. So to see them like this in film, it's obviously they're dealing with different types of stereotypes that we're looking at. But I thought it was really interesting, because now when we look at film, we can say oh, we're getting so progressive and we're moving so much forward. But are we?
Yeah.
Are we? Because I feel now we're getting more pigeonholed into roles, and we're trying to, I mean, obviously it comes and goes in different cycles. I'm so excited for the new, okay, we're going to get off track for a little bit, but I'm very excited for the new Wakanda Forever. It's going to be incredible. And it's all focused around the ladies from the first film. So I'm excited for this, because it's done in a way that, I mean, obviously R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. If you were still alive, the movie would be a different thing, of course. But to have them pivot so naturally into this, I think is so incredibly powerful, and I think it really resonates. Okay, where was I going with this? I got so excited. I'm so excited for Wakanda Forever. I literally cannot wait.
November 11th.
I know. And I never get excited for superhero movies, because Marvel's been really pooping it out. Okay, let's get back to this. Besides of whatever I think, but I love the representation in this film, not for anyone other than white. This whole movie's white. There's not a single person of color. I'm so sorry to say.
Different time.
Different time, but I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
it's not like people of color didn't exist. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. It's
I think they're at the party.
maybe.
Maybe.
That's a strong maybe.
Maybe.
But okay, but we can get back into the movie. I just had a little rant. Maybe I'll go on another one later. But so I really loved the film. I thought it's really cool that this movie kind of so effortlessly has brought together all these classic monsters.
Yes.
Whereas we saw DC and Warner Brothers try to bring back the monsters and they failed. They couldn't do it.
Van Helsing.
And then they did Tom Cruise's The Mummy, which was supposed to do the dark universe with Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yep.
We had, what's his name? He did the Wolfman. Del Toro. What's his first name? Benicio del Toro. We got it. He did his Wolfman. They were going to have The Rock be the Swamp Thing. Like, they were trying to build this universe and make it dark. Didn't work. And look at how effortlessly they did it with with Bela Lugosi. Like, it's just so crazy to me that I think now we try to complicate things so much where it could be so easy.
I know the funny thing is, this movie, Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, was the last time that the three monsters were together until Van Helsing came out. And then they brought them back all together. So that was kind of amazing because that's such a long time period.
1948 to what? Early 2000s?
Early 2000.
Like, that's crazy. That's 60 years. That's crazy to me.
Yep.
And all these monsters have been, like, so used in other things.
Right.
I do like the end. The end actually was one of my favorite parts of this movie when they escape from everything. They're getting off the island. They're in the boat. And the Invisible Man's like, don't forget about me.
Yeah, Vincent Price. Yep. That was
so
great.
good.
That was so funny.
And I was like, wow, they really covered all their bases. And they really paid a great homage to the classic monsters.
Yes, they did. And I think just the interaction with Lou and the monster were great. Like when he's sitting on his lap. And like, so if you read into the story, you read the backstory, he kept on ad-libbing. So the guy playing the monster would crack up laughing, and they had to do numerous takes on this. And if you watch the movie, you can see like when he gets up, the monster is smiling because he just couldn't stop laughing because of Lou, because Lou is just so funny. Then when they're on the table and he's like, Junior.
He's like, come save me. It's so funny.
Right? It's so funny. And then when the monster and the Wolfman are pushing the table and he's on it and he's like, whoa, whoa.
It's so funny. And it's like that like effort. I know it's not effortless, but I'm going to use the word effortless. But like this like effortless like charisma and like just like hilarity that they embody. I don't think we had seen again until we got Robin Williams, who is just or was just incredible.
The one thing I like about Abbott and Costello is like nowadays movies, like there's a lot of like for the comedy, they have to use a lot of vulgarity. They have to use a lot of swearing. They have to use a lot of demeaning of people. Abbott and Costello really don't. It's a pure comedy. I mean, it's funny as all get out, but they don't do demeaning stuff. They don't really like attack anybody. They're just having fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say the only demographic within this film, besides all the demographics that they blatantly ignore, would be like bigger people. Right. Because of Lou, they punch down on him a lot, saying like, how could you pull women with your size? Like, you're dumpy. Yes. What do they see in you? But I think he has such a good sense of humor about it. He's like, I'm a great guy. What wouldn't they see in me? Right. You know? So I liked the movie more than I thought. I'm not going to lie. I was like, oh, it's going to be like a slow sort of, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. Like we touched a little bit on the pot when Chick is talking to Lou about what he has. He goes, if you had 2 cigarettes, you'd share them with me. He goes, absolutely. He goes, if you had 2 pairs of shoes, you'd share them with me. He goes, absolutely. He goes, you have 2 girls. He goes, why don't you take the cigarette and the shoes and take a walk?
I know. And that is so funny because he's like, why? Like, I'll share with you. But I think, too, like, to a point, Lou understands that, like, you can't share people.
Right.
I'm not going to pawn one of these ladies off, which I think is, like, this male mentality, not to get into the male psyche.
I get it.
But it's like, oh, well, if there are 2 girls and there's 2 of us, 1 for each of us, how does that math work? People are going to like who they like. Like, you can't, just because we're paired up doesn't mean I owe you anything. And I think it's a thing we see in movies and TV, and I think in real life all the time. Like, I don't know what your experience is with that. You're obviously male.
I think it's true. I like to hit on that conversation again. Later on, they have another conversation. He talks about how Chick had set him up with a girl.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, did you see that tooth? He's like, the one tooth. Like it's really funny because like if you see Cassandra and the Dr. Mornay,
it was a German name.
She's really pretty. Like they're pretty and
very like classically for the 1940s, beautiful.
for Lou to get these girls, he's really impressed with himself. And, he looks at Chick like, look, you did have girls try to, but you pawned off what wasn't a good-looking woman on me just so you could have the good-looking woman. Now I got two good-looking women. Why do I have to do anything to you?
Do anything. And I think it's kind of like, if I had a friend like Chick, I would be like, I don't think you're really my friend.
Right.
Chick was a bad friend.
Yes.
He is mean.
Yeah.
He gives someone he would deem undesirable to his friend. I'm sorry. I want the best for all my friends.
Right. And I think that's what the thing about those two is. It's like they play off each other.
Oh, yeah.
Where Chick is the bad guy. He's not a good friend. He's not. And Lou is a good friend. He's like a good friend. And he tries to help Chick. He's like, look, there's these monsters and I want you not to get killed. And Chick's like, I don't believe you. And he's like, no, trust me, you got to believe me because we're going to die.
Yeah, seriously. It's so crazy. And like, I don't know, like he's just like, oh, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're dim-witted. Like, how can you can't even stack boxes right. They're falling on top. Like, he is so mean to him. But right. Lou is so just like, he's like a golden retriever. He's like, well, this is my friend. Let's go. Believe me or not, we're doing it together. Just like, I
think at the end you see Chick come around. He's
absolutely. Well,
he's like, we survived the monster. We survived Dracula. We survived the Wolfman. And he's like, do you believe me now? And he's like, I believe,
Yeah.
So Lou's kind of got the upper hand on him. He's like, yeah. And that's when the Invisible Man comes out and they both jump off the boat together.
And it's so funny. I was such a huge fan of this movie, more so than I thought.
You got to see Meet the Killers.
I'll watch it next.
Oh, Meet the Killers is so funny. It's got Boris Karloff. He did this movie after he refused to do anything with this movie except do promotions.
Which is misleading.
Yeah. So he is in Meet the Killers.
That's cool.
And it's really funny. And if you get a chance, there's another one called Hold That Ghost where they go to a haunted mansion. It's hysterical. Like, these guys are really great classic comedy guys. And if you listen to this podcast, I advise you just to watch one of their movies and you'll greatly appreciate their talent. It's sheer raw talent that these two have and how they play off each other.
It is. It absolutely is. That kind of relationship and like, I don't know, like chemistry and just like level of understanding and trust that you have to have with another person to be so in sync and as funny as they are. I think it's a rare thing. I don't think we see it a lot anymore. I don't know who I would call a comedy duo of this day that I have to see.
Well, they're trying to do some pairings. They got The Rock and Kevin Hart. They have some funny moments. Adam Sandler's been pairing up with some people doing movies.
Yeah, but like working with your friends is different, I think. Because at the end of the day, they're all still stars in their own right, where I don't think you could separate Abbott from Costello.
No.
And they would be successful on their own.
No.
These are people who are successful on their own. Come together.
As a duo, yeah.
As a duo.
No, I don't see anybody right now that you can honestly say that pairs off each other and is so funny together.
Yeah.
I mean, there's comedians that you pair up and they're funny together. And then other than that, like, I know Jackie Chan and
Chris Tucker.
That was funny.
Okay.
But they did their own things by themselves.
They did their own thing.
Yep.
Can I tell you but Rush Hours are now all streaming on Netflix. So I have been watching 1 and 2 and they are funny, but some parts are a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
We won't get into that one, but maybe we'll do it later. But yeah, I was watching it and I was like, absolutely did not remember this.
Yeah.
But when you watch a movie like Abbott and Costello that came back so long ago and you're like, wow, I'm not offended by anything in this movie. It is just a funny movie.
It's pure comedy.
It doesn't punch down. I mean, obviously we talked about the issues, but it's not like it's not like it's intentionally trying to do harm or making jokes at the expense of others, except for Costello, who's in on the joke because he wrote it.
Right. Yeah. And the funny thing is, when they first got the script, they didn't like it.
Oh yeah, they hated it.
They thought what they say. My daughter can write a better script than this. So there was a lot that went into this movie. This movie just wasn't made. There was a lot of like rewriting. There was a lot of casting issues. Like I said, they thought Bela Lugosi was dead. They had to get had to get the right scheduling to get into this movie so he could be in it. Karloff absolutely refused to be the person. So there was a lot of stuff that went on behind the scenes. But when it all came together, it's probably it's an all-time classic.
Easy. And now I'm gonna add it to my like Halloween rotation.
Yep. You have to because they say it's not part of the Monsterverse because in the Monsterverse, Lon Chaney Jr. loses his ability to turn into a werewolf in House of Dracula.
Okay.
But that House of Dracula had Chaney and didn't have Lugosi, it didn't have Karloff, it didn't have Vincent Price. So they don't consider that like the original monsters. Because the original monsters are Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and Chaney. Those are the originals. And this is the closest thing you get to having all of them in the movie. Even though Karloff wasn't in it, he did promote it.
He did promote it. So, you'll have a photo of them all together there. But I think it's exciting. I think it's great. I love, if you've listened to the podcast, we love a horror comedy. To think that this is where some of that has started, is this movie here, I think is amazing. And it's crazy. It's crazy how things interpret and change throughout the years, I think.
Yes. Yep.
And this is one of them, and it's so good. Highly recommend. I had to rent it on Amazon. I don't know how you watched yours.
I bought it.
Okay.
I bought it 2 years ago, so I have it on Movies Anywhere. That's how much I love this movie.
It's a great movie. I should have bought it, but highly, highly, highly recommend. Well, we're rounding out our spooky October with a few more movies, and we're going to be covering some newer ones now that we've done some older ones. But we're excited, and then in November, I'm trying to think: are there any like real Thanksgiving movies that are good?
Not really.
Not really. Maybe. Well, we'll see. We'll dive in. Maybe we'll do something November. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we'll continue doing horror movies. We'll call it Scary November.
Scary November.
Why not?
No Turkey November.
Right?
I don't know.
We'll think of something.
We'll think. Well, I hope you guys have a great time. I'm gonna send it to Ben.
All right. Well, we're gonna round it out and say goodbye. Tune in next week to What's Happening.